Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
So we're going to ask you to lend us your attention spans for the next, let's call it 50 minutes to an hour. And Kim and I are going to dive deep into a few topics that are probably very top of mind for everyone here. And I want to let the audience know that we have reserved some time as well to take questions. We want to make this interactive and engaging and make sure that we hit the topics that you are really concerned and excited to hear about. So I'm going to reserve a little bit of time at the end for that. If you do have a question as we start our discussion, there is the QR code. You can log into that. It'll take you to the spot that you need to, and then you type in your question, and hopefully we'll have a good kind of engaging round of discussion after you and I do our one-on-one. So first things first, I want to acknowledge the fact that this is going to be the last kind of public speaking engagement that you do before you leave this current role as the CEO of the CVCA. I want to talk a little bit about timing. So why did now feel like the right time to kind of hand over the reins?
Well, I guess it's never a good time or right time. It's just what life brings at you. I've been the CEO of the CVCA since 2019. I always joke that when I took the job, I didn't know what an LP and a GP was. They didn't hire me because I had a long track record in investing and understood the space really well. I was hired because I knew government really well. I knew how to advocate. I was, I believe, a strong communicator. Spent a lot of time with your peers drilling me on questions and trying to get their scoops in the media. So, but I was also there during a transformative time. 2019 saw the beginning of a huge spike in venture capital in Canada. Even private equity sustained investments, and I took the job with a really strong conviction that these dollars were instrumental in growing Canada's GDP, and that's been kind of the undercurrent of everything we've done. And I always say to people that I mentor, when you're in a job, you need to stay in that job as long as you're learning. If you're still extracting knowledge and experience and connection from that moment, then you're not done. And I feel like I'd come to a point where we had built a lot at CVCA. We had convinced the government to put over $2 billion in the asset class, and in the fall economic statement in the platform for Carney, there was another $2 billion there. So lots of momentum, lots of, and then you always want to leave on a high. And then someone came and courted me, and you always have to be curious in life. Remember this, when a headhunter calls or if someone talks to you, you never say no. You always listen, because you never know what's at the end of that proposal. And the opportunity to go back to the Retail Council of Canada, where I was 17 years ago. It was my first job after when I worked in politics. And it just felt like a good challenge, and it's a clear mandate that I got from the board. So I get to say my goodbyes for the summer to this industry. But as I said to Anne, Canada's a two-call country. Like, we're all going to be together. Doesn't matter what role I am. There's a part of my heart that stays with private capital when I go and take this new opportunity and new challenge in September.
Absolutely. So this is part of, I would say, the big hurrah within your farewell tour, if you will. I want to reflect just a little bit on what you've seen during your tenure. So you said you've been at the helm of the CVCA since 2019. A lot has happened in a very short time. I mean, you've had a lifetime's worth of crises and opportunities come up from, those early days, those scary days of 2020, the pandemic and everything that it unleashed, including this massive surge in e-commerce and the subsequent soft landing that we've all gone through and are still going through. What stands out to you as the most memorable?
Well, I'm even going to go back a little bit more, because when I joined CVCA, and you guys should all be getting the data that we produce every quarter. It's produced specifically for investors in terms of the rounds that are happening, but I always say to entrepreneurs, you need to be familiar with this data, because this data helps you figure out where you fit in the ecosystem, what investors has done around that mirrors what you're building, understanding who does that, and we can talk about we'll come back to that. But during the 2000 kind of bubble crash, there was like a huge dip in venture capital in Canada. And then by the time 2008 came, like it kind of tinkered between 2000 and 2008. In 2008, it was gone. And the chair of the Business Development Bank, BDC at the time, went to see Jim Flaherty and said, all of the investors in this asset class have fled. There's no more LPs fueling venture capital. We need to create a program that would entice this capital and de-risk it. So Flaherty agreed, and hence was born the VCAP program, which then became the Vicky and the renewed Vicky. And this is the government putting money to work and asking the street, the private dollars, to come and meet it, to invest in these moments. And when I took on the role in 2019, that first year that we reported in 2020 for the 2019, we were at $6 billion. But in 2013, there was $2 billion invested. Think about that. Like, just wait and like close your eyes and think, $2 billion across Canada for all startups. So then flash forward to 2019, we're at 6. Then we go, and I was saying to the board at the time, we should be 14, because the US at the time was 140. And we're a tenth of everything in the US, so we should be 14. By the time we got to 2021, we were 16. But then the US was 340. And so you had this huge momentum and these dollars fueling. And some will agree a little bit too much. Too much dollars, not enough discipline, valuations really high, people chasing the deal. I always call it falling in love with the house. You don't get the inspection, you just buy it, which was mirrored in that market at the same time. And now we see a realignment. And we just pushed out Q1, 1.3 billion. It's low. So there's big questions of, and a quarter doesn't tell the story of a year or so. There's still a few data points. But for me, what really stood out was this element of, we've got the ambition, we've got the talent, we're building the company, the capital is meeting that moment. There was a little bit of effervescence in 2021, but I can tell you that in the aftermath, even though it's more difficult, the talent, the quality, and the solidity of this ecosystem, what you guys are building, is so much more robust than it's been in any other episode of dollars flowing to this asset class that would have mirrored like the .com and different periods where you saw dollars flow to startups. There's something really special going on here, and I was very privileged to be there in this moment of kind of like this, call it almost a wave of all these startups coming to life.
What an interesting kind of moment in history. And one of the themes that's come up a lot over the course of this conference is this has been a tough year. It's been a tough couple of years for people who want to get some VC investment. What words of advice would you give to them, to founders in this room and the teams that are trying to build something and scale and make a difference?
Well, grit is a requirement, and it comes with staying the course. We're lucky because in Canada there's a lot of it, and I have the chance to travel across the country, and if I'm in Saskatoon or Halifax, like, the founders in Canada do so much more with so little versus like their peers around the world. So if currently you're in a company and it's uncertain what the future looks like, I think you just have to have the conviction. You need to understand the problem that you're solving. If you're early stage, which I understand a lot of you are, that problem may evolve and you're going to be tinkering. A lot of the investors that invest in pre-seed, seed, they know the company that they've chosen to invest in is not the company that will get a Series C, B, C, D. Like, even a Series A could be extremely different from what a seed is. They're betting on you. Like, this is a people business. So you have to have that conviction, you have to have the grit, you have to understand the problem you're trying to solve. You need to be agile enough to modify your course, have a relationship, and I know we want to talk about the relationship between VCs and startups and what makes for a perfect marriage, because it is a marriage. We'll get to that. But I would say John Rittaker at RBCX has published a number of reports. Last year he did something on exits, and I know he's working on something that will come out in a few weeks on staying the course. And there's one slide that he presented at our Invest conference in Calgary a few weeks ago where he shows the inverse effect of when the times are tough, when you're sitting in your office right now and you think like, this sucks, like there's not enough money, I don't have the talent, this is really hard, like do I continue, The companies you're building today are the companies that are gonna have the alpha. The companies that are built at a time of effervescence usually are not the ones. So if you have the conviction and the grit, keep going. Just keep your head down, work with your team, surround yourself with the right people, have the right mentors and the right advice, and just keep going. A decade from now, you're probably going to be able to put those shoulders back, your head high, and look back at what you've built, because you're in the most fertile moment of what this asset class, which investors do this for 30, 40 years. Like when they look at the different funds that they fundraise, this vintage, right now, these companies that you're building are the ones that are going to return the alpha.
Now, I want to get back to, you talked about, the marriage aspect, finding the right fit, the right relationship. I think timing is really important in terms of cultivating that relationship before you actually even need an investment, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that, because I don't think we can hammer it home enough.
Yeah. So if you think you're building a business that will require VC investment, and that's the trajectory you want to go down, you're getting married. And if you're married in real life or in a relationship right now and you're thinking, I'm going to pop the question, I bought the ring, there's a lot of conversations you need to have. Are we going to have any kids? How are we going to discipline the kids? What kind of life do we want to have? Where do you want to live? Like all these things before you enter a long-term commitment, these value lifestyle questions, they need to be had. And as you ponder that first check, you need to have these conversations and understand who's the individual that you're inviting in your startup. Is this someone that is aligned with your vision? Because they will be there longer than most actual marriage. 12, 15, if it's an angel investor, that person can be in your life for almost 20 years. And you need to also be mindful that the pressure that will be on you once you decide to take that VC dollar is high. They're looking for the power law. They're not looking for lifestyle companies. They're not looking for something that's going to putter along and they're looking for a hockey stick growth curve. So you also have to be really honest with yourself. Is that what I'm building? And often you'll say, Kim, I don't know. I'm just starting. I've got the ambition to build that. But it just shows how important it is to pick the right person. Now, in order to get married, you need to date. And in order to date, you need to get out there and meet people and get a sense. So you don't wait until you need money to build relationship with investors. You're out there, you're networking, you're getting to know people. And then once you have a sense that you've met someone where, someone at Panache or someone like early stage investor, you think, okay, I'm going to build this relationship over the next few years with this person, and I'm going to send them tidbits here and there of information. Do I have the permission to update you? And not all your decks and everything. Like, they'll never read them. Like, you have to be really strategic. Like, what do I need them to know about how things are going for me and my company, so that when it's time, I'm not an unknown. I'm someone in a company that they've been following, and I'm giving them just enough to keep them informed. And you want to do that with a multitude of investors. And as I was saying earlier, on the CVCA website, you can search for all of our members. You can go through CVCA Intelligence. There's a portion that will be free. But if you're really serious, I would invite you to take $250, buy the license for a month, and just drill down in the data. who has done the rounds, who was the syndicates, because you'll see everything, like who led it, who else was there, and then you do your due diligence on here's what they've done in the past, who they've invested in. These are companies that are similar to ours. These are competitors or people. And then you really, once you show up at an investor and you know what they've done, you know where they've invested, you know the round, you know the amount, it makes you look and feel like, okay, this person knows what they're doing. And so it starts by getting to know people, building the relationship, and then when you go in to ask for the money, do the homework.
Now, that's such great advice, and I hope people are remembering this and writing it down. I want to be mindful of the fact that nothing happens in a vacuum. This is a time of great uncertainty, and I've basically been saying that since 2020. There's a lot going on. Last time you and I shared a stage was back in February. It was at a breakfast event at Mars, and the number one thing that people wanted to know about, that people were desperate to know about, was the tariff situation. With the tariff threats and how to manage that and how to plan and pivot for whatever was coming down the line. I feel like today we have a little more certainty on the trade front. There's a lot going on geopolitically, so I would not say that it's a more certain time. But what can you share in terms of companies that are grappling with all of this uncertainty, a lot of it stemming from trade and tariffs? And I ask this because I sometimes refer to you, like out loud and in my head, as the Trump whisperer. Yes, and this has to do with your experience in foreign affairs and the trade file, not because of anything else specifically to do with Trump, but I think you have some very unique insight when it comes to this type of uncertainty. How do you separate out the noise and the rhetoric from what's actually coming down the line with policy? How do you plan for the unknowable?
Okay, well, that was a
big question.
Yeah,
right?
the big prelude. There's no such thing as a Trump whisperer, I think.
Fair.
The unpredictability of the man would make that title disappear very quickly. When we sat together in February, there was unknown because nothing had happened yet. It was just starting. I think there's still a lot of unknown. It's just a lot of things have happened to us, and we've adjusted to, and this asset class, the investors, because you deal in the world of intangibles, the impact, like if we were all working in steel and in aluminum, we would have a very different feel in this room than what has actually happened. The movement of people between the two countries, talent, the ability, if you're not originally from Canada and you're traveling on a visa, like there's some people who are like, I don't want to go. Like there's so much of that uncertainty, and that is not good. Uncertainty is not good for investment. It's the first thing that people look for. Am I investing in a stable environment that I know that my money will be safe?
Yeah, the uncertainty puts a chill on a lot of things. It kills momentum.
It does, but in the Valley, things are moving normally. Like there's a sense that there's, like, especially clusters of companies, the large language model companies, like, and I think there's a redefinition of what AI is, and like, when I joined CVCA, there was no AI fund, and Radical came on scene, and they were an AI fund. You're like, oh, they do AI now. Like every company has an adoption of AI, and you have to be really careful to call yourself an AI company. Everyone is using or should be thinking about using that. When it comes to the policy landscape, I think the one thing that is positive is the performance of our new prime minister in all of the interactions that he's had with the American president. I think it's been, the Oval Office meeting was good. Him saying we're not for sale, and like having nothing going sideways. Even if Donald Trump left the G7 early, there was still a sense of the two men having a rapport. The teams, there's an acceleration in the negotiation. And I'm of two minds, like you want things to be settled, but what Trump did in talking about the 51st state and the challenge and what he planted in the minds and hearts of Canadians in terms of how much we love this country and how it is different from the United States is an opportunity for us to fix certain things and to do the things more efficiently. for the Canadian government to really understand that procurement matters, buying Canadian, finding ways of stimulating what the deal that they signed with Cohere this week. This is the kind of thing that you shouldn't have needed Donald Trump to start strategically thinking about these startups, these Canadian companies that are going to get like a lift from working with entities in Canada. So there's positive sign. The two administrations are working together. There's negotiators there. There's a honeymoon phase happening between the provinces and the federal, and it's not going to last. Someone's going to take their toys and go home, and then things will unravel, and we don't want status quo. We want the different actors around the country to build and to create more solid foundations, barriers to trade, barriers to mobility. Like Canada is a bunch of small little countries within its borders, and it's inefficient. So my hope is that there's not a trade deal signed tomorrow morning, because that means everyone's like, well, we're done.
We did it.
We fixed it. Everything is fine now. We can just go back to being normal when the world is not normal anymore. And we have the potential in Canada to build so much more and to be more cohesive, more efficient, more together, and to have scale. We have the ambition, but the system in which we operate is fragmented. So to bring some unity to that and to make us more solid is still underway. So I would see one glass half full. Like we have work to do, and we have, and it's up to us as well to put the pressure on people. Like when we voice our opinions, and as we speak about what we want, not to let those people that have been given the mandate to try to find these solutions get away with status quo.
And I think it's interesting that we've waited this long until AI came up in the conversation. And I also think a lot of what we refer to as AI today in a year or two is just going to be baked into a lot of the services and the processes and the platforms that we use. But in that vein of AI being ubiquitous, that term being thrown around, have you had a chance to meet or to talk with the new federal AI minister? So that's Evan Solomon. He used to work at CVC, yeah. And he doesn't have that kind of private sector experience in AI, but he has signaled that he really wants to take a more kind of innovation fostering approach as opposed to a heavy hand when it comes to AI regulation. How do you feel about his appointment and what he's communicated as his strategy?
And we talked about this last week, Anna, as we were preparing for this conversation. The tone that's coming out of his office and what he's saying is different than what Champagne was communicating last year in terms of regulation and putting some guardrails around it. And you want to make sure, we know the effect of social media and different, like governments, I think, are seized with the obligation to make sure that nothing bad comes of these applications. But what we heard from Solomon was the mandate that he got from Prime Minister Carney was to look at AI and the adoption of AI first and foremost into government. That's great, because that means they're looking at their house, and the government has a ton of repetitive tasks, tons of data, and the ability to put in place these systems and the adoption and the deal with Cohere signals really quickly that they're going to start looking at how they make government more efficient and possibly save some dollars that could be attributed to other things. I have not met him. There's a gentleman named Mark Sean who's the deputy minister responsible for AI. He's someone I know well. He was there. He was moved from PCO to that role less than a year ago. He's an incredibly capable person, and I think him with Minister Solomon, who's new to the role, I think he has someone really solid next to him in terms of thinking about this. And again, a minister, like we were talking about, like does he report to Public Works? Like how does this fit into the mixture of the different departments? If you're adopting this, different departments need to adopt it. Are they going to roll this out within one department? All departments find something that has connectivity between all of them. Unclear exactly how they're going to get there. But the one thing that we felt, and I don't know, you kind of hinted at it, I'm a bit of a policy geek and spent many years in Ottawa, the tone coming out of the Prime Minister's office is so different than anything I've ever felt before. The choice of Michael Sabia as the clerk of the Privy Council, coming back, leaving. He was at CDPQ. He was first an official a long time ago, went to Bell Canada, then ran CDPQ in Quebec, the pension plan, came back to be the deputy minister during COVID, did incredible things in a very short window, left to go run Hydro-Quebec, and now is coming back. And you have a prime minister that's business-minded who wants processes to run quickly and efficiently, and Sabia is not someone that only thinks that. He's demonstrated that he understands the different levers in government and how to get things done. And he joins in July, and the two of them together, well, get your popcorn. We'll see what they do.
So that's some of the what's going on in the background and some of that context. I want to talk about trends that are on your radar. What are you excited about? What is interesting to you? And I ask that as someone who's just come back from Web Summit in Vancouver. Agentic AI was top of mind and kind of something that came up again and again in conversation. What's on your radar?
Well, I think all the AI, like in the subcategories around that, will continue. One of the things that will be curious to watch for is what some of you may do with the signals that we're getting that the government will be investing heavily in defense. And you're like, okay, we're not in defense. But Canada has a huge lead on quantum. There's tons of unicorns that are in the cyberspace. So there are like defense adjacent technologies that you can be thinking about. When you think about, okay, follow the money, there's such a need for that. And currently, you can count, like there's 1 or 2 funds in Canada that would, like VC funds that invest in that. But because the dollars are there, and the NATO has a fund called Diana, and all of the NATO countries, including Canada, have agreed to do a fund-to-fund and to put money into. So there's going to be different tables and different opportunities for people to think about these types of technologies. And that's the exciting part. Like, what will entrepreneurs do when they see the signal that a problem needs to be solved? There's like technologies and areas that need to be invested in terms of solutions. So there's so much capital that are going to flow in that direction. And Canada, as already said, 2% of NATO target is going to go up. And the Prime Minister said, we're not just going to throw a number, we're going to look at what we need. So entrepreneurs in Canada are going to be, okay, what do we need? What's the addressable market? What's the solution? What does the market need? Let's go build it. And I think that's going to be possibly a space that we have not seen Canada do a lot in, even though we have significant knowledge base in that space.
Now, before I get into the audience questions, because I do see the clock winding down, I want to ask you if you had a magic wand, or I guess if I had a magic wand, you could have 3 things just come to fruition that could foster innovation in Canada. What 3 things would you ask for, would you want in place?
I spoke about it a minute ago. Procurement is key. The ability to sell to Canadians. Like, I worked in life sciences before, and we would always say in that space, Canada's open for investment but closed for business. So you can bring and you can build it here, but no one will buy, like especially in medtech. You build these technologies and you have to go and convince somewhere else. And they say, who's using it in Canada? And think about it, you're a company, you're like, no one in my country is using this, but I'm telling you it works. So we need to be able to have that culture. Like, so if I had one, I would put in place all these processes to say, okay, when you have something, we have this culture of adoption and we help these founders.
Is that having a bit of a moment too between patriotism by Canadian and just people understanding that we can uplift within our own borders first?
I think B2C is happening, but a medtech company like the Buy Canadian, there's pressure on budgets. So people are like, oh, am I really taking a chance on this? I don't know. So it's just finding ways to create pathways that enable people that are open-minded. And like, we could sit another 2 hours here and talk about healthcare and how that needs a full reform. But so procurement in the larger sense of the word, and then talent. And we talked about this, what happened during the first Trump administration, and having a lot of people who had N1H1B visas choose to come to Canada. When Minister Fraser was Minister of Immigration, they opened the gates in Canada. I think it was 10,000 visa for anyone who had an N1H1. And you just, if you had one, you were in. It took less than a week, 10,000 visas gone. But it was a different moment in Canada, like immigration, like international students, housing. Like immigration has taken a little bit of a turn in politically. So if I had a wand, I would make sure that like our openness to talent and making sure that Canada is where everyone from around the world who is the brightest and most dynamic and most ambitious decides they're going to build. And then the third one would be convincing a lot more LPs, including our pension plans, our university endowments, foundations, like people that are very active in the US, that have remained on the sidelines in Canada, that they would come into the fray and take an educated risk on this asset class and what it can produce in terms of GDP and growth economically.
One of my favorite questions to ask, and I feel like this flows right into it. What keeps you up at night? What do you worry about?
Oh, God. We get young boys.
Top 1 to 3. Yeah, that's topic for a whole other separate conversation.
Well, the world is uncertain, and I know that this audience is diverse and comes from everywhere. And when you think around the geopolitical turmoil that we're seeing and the tension between certain nations, that's probably the first thing. Like, are we in a moment in time that's, as you were saying, like this news cycle, and then we'll be back to normal? Will we go back to a sense of normalcy, or are we navigating waters that will lead to even more?
It does feel like uncharted territory, but also you look back on the recent past, and the kind of human nature is we revert to the mean, to what's easy, to what we know.
Yeah, there's the U.S. worries me tremendously. The bedrock of democracy and the institutions that kind of put guardrail around any one person's ambition or party's ambition feel like they're fraying. What we saw in California last week. And there's a large swath of Americans that are like, yeah, no, we don't want illegal immigrants, but this is not, like, this is such like a brush across, and like just, it feels like it's breaking things. And in the US, in its role internationally, what they did this weekend, and that their decision to intervene, like they're saying, they're having two different discourse. We don't want to be engaged in the world, and they're still engaged, and this is what we're going to do that is good for Americans, which tariffs are horrible for Americans. They bring up the price of goods, and so it's so convoluted, and it affects all of us. There's no such thing as like, well, that's happening over there. We're, as we were saying earlier, the level of us being interconnected, our economies being interconnected. And so that would be the first one. And I think the second one is the time that we spend online and how our lives are reverting, especially as we have all this AI technology coming at us, and the use of the AI, like the ability to create videos, and just what is true, what is not true, is going to become so much more difficult to assert. And you think, oh, well, that's happening over there. It could actually be you. It could be something about you where you can't defute it because it looks so real. And so, and even as Minister Solomon decides to spend his focus on how he adopts AI, what the government was doing before in thinking strategically about those protective guardrails are so important. And I feel we're in a time of crisis where economically we need to figure this out. And if any of you have kids, then like your level of anxiety goes up so much more, because they live in a world where that's their sandbox. Like they live in virtual. And it makes, but on the same, and like, this is not meant to be all negative, like what keeps me up at night can also be positive. Um, the talent that we have in this country, like the resources that we have, like we're a rich country, both in terms of who has chosen to be here, to build here, the ability to scale a company, and what we've seen in terms of the number of unicorns that have, and it's an interesting place, Canada. We don't talk about them a lot. All these companies, $1 billion, like not just in valuation, like real companies with EBITDA positive, like growth and profitability are operating, and Canadians are not celebrating them enough. They don't even know they exist, and so I think if I had any ounce of like ambition, it would be like, let's make sure everyone knows that these are Canadian company and how fantastic they are, and they started by an idea and a couple people deciding to take a chance and to build.
I'm going to quickly switch over to some of the questions, and we can treat it like a lightning round. It doesn't have to be, a super fulsome answer, but I do want to get to quite a few of these if we can. In your view, what is the number one mistake startups do and that they should stop doing now? So it's in that line of advice.
Sometimes you have to look up and get out there and shake some hands.
Can you tell us a little bit about the most memorable pitches you've seen and what did they excel on? Like what made them stand out?
Concise, clear solution and market addressability, and the person delivering. Like that ability to like convey an idea, it is really a people business. And especially when you're doing a pitch, it means you're at the beginning of your journey. You need to be as compelling as you can, and the person who's watching you from the front row when you're on stage, they're looking at you. Like there's a lot of things that you're saying, but it's a real mixture of the personality and who the founder is, and like with that person who's been asked to deliver that pitch, and very concise, and know your numbers. If you never go in a pitch not knowing your numbers, and if you trip on your numbers, it's really hard to come back from it.
Yeah, know your numbers, know how to connect. Those are a skill set that doesn't always live robustly in the same person, so maybe it's a team effort sometimes too. Does the CVCA focus its funding on any specific sectors? And if I'm in the fitness industry, would I be eligible for support? It's pretty specific.
Well, CVCA does not have any dollars. I always say, I have no money, but I know everyone who has money. And I guess in the fitness world, there's, I guess I would have, is it a BDC, B2B, depending where it is. And again, there's always room for funding companies. It's just what problem you're trying to solve and how big is, and have people done it before? Like knowing your competition, in that case, you would want to know, okay, who's out there doing this and why has no one done it? And if you get out there, is someone going to just say, oh, that's a good idea, and then you'll be brushed away because someone has the capability of just introducing that. Like as a startup, you want to say like, yeah, no one can come at me. And I'm going to run fast and I'm going to go and take some market share.
What is your leadership style?
Well, I come from a really small town of 600 people where there's no traffic lights. And when I became the director of communication to the foreign affairs minister, when I worked in politics, I showed up in my hometown thinking I was very important. And this fisherman, because I'm from seashore fishing place, basically sat me down and told me that I was just Kim. And that was years ago. And it was so telling. Like, this guy just smacked me down. He was like, who do you think you are? Sit down. Like, there's nothing different between you this year and you last year. And it really stayed with me. I grew up in a family that had restaurants. I started working when I was 8, peeling potatoes. So I feel like when I am in a leadership role, and I've been for a number of years now, I every job can be my job. I don't think anyone is important, and I'm not important. I'm just one person in a team that has a different role, and usually the buck stops with me. And so I like to surround myself with really smart people that are even better than me. And I don't send emails on the evening and weekends because I don't like getting them. So that gives you a bit of a potpourri of.
Super interesting. Kim, you touched on values. Do core values matter when considering the fit between a venture and a VC? Are you seeing more values-driven impact VCs in this environment?
Oh, it matters. And we are seeing, like I think about Janet Bannister at Staircase, who fundraised in the last couple years, and the way that she's putting forward a different kind of relationship with the people that she invests in, like thinking about mental health, like founders and entrepreneurs, it's a very lonely space, and the stress is real when you're not making payroll and you have these people like counting on you. And then you have these investors that are putting the pressure. If you don't have, to me, empathy is so important. You still have to deliver. Like if you're going to get up in the morning and do a job and do something that is not been done, or if you have like big mandate and like a list of to-dos, you have to, do your work well, be prepared, deliver, surround yourself, be accountable. But we're all human. So finding an investor that's, if someone is there and they're giving you more money, but and follow your gut. And I would say that even when you hire people, when you're building your team, sometimes someone will come and they have all the qualification. They look great. You interview them and they're like, yeah, this person, they've got the right degree, but your gut tells you something off here. Like, I don't know if they would be a good member of the team, but you think, but they sound so good.
On paper.
On paper, but even you think like, they've said all the right things in the interview, you're there, you're not doing it by yourself, you're talking to the other folks, and they're like, yeah, but if you don't think it's a good fit, it usually is not a good fit. And it's gonna bite you back at the end of the day if you're not following your gut. And that's in everything. Every decision. My brother's favorite expression is, when there's a doubt, there's no doubt. So when there's doubt, like there's a reason why like your instincts are so much stronger than we ever give them credit for. So you need to make sure that you listen. It's telling you something.
Your inner radar, if you will. We just have a couple minutes. There is a question here about how you manage work-life balance, being a successful woman leader and a mom. And an understanding that, we don't really ask men these questions, but I am curious to know how you manage the juggling act.
Yeah, I actually think I got married when I was much older, like I was almost 40 when I had my kids. So there was a really good sense of who I was before I even met my husband, and he used to joke like, I ate before you came along, so I married someone who was really self-sustained. Like I used to travel a lot and make food. He's like, no, get out of here. Like I don't need you to do this. So having a partner, choosing your partner, going back to marriage, like who's going to build this thing with you, understanding that you have your own ambition and your goals. And as a mom, there's many days where you think like, I'm not doing this right. And then there's days where you think like, okay, I think I'm like, when I see my boys picking up books, and my husband and I read a lot, and sometimes we'll say, okay, all of us are reading on a Saturday morning, and I look up and we all have our nose in our books. I think, okay,
Bliss.
We've done something well. But one thing to all the women in this room, COVID did something really strange, where we are working from home sometimes, and you're in the office, and then you have kids, and you think, oh, I'm home, so I can, when I'm home and my kids are there, especially when I can do both. You can't. Like, not the way you think. Like, you and I, when you went back to work, and you made a plan. So I'm not saying that you can't, but you have to be mindful that when you're in the working frame of mind, you need to have a plan. You need a village, you need people to help you. It's not all on you. And so you need to ask, and you need to make sure, and nothing has to be perfect. My God, you should see my car. It's a terrible thing. Like I would be embarrassed to have any one of you like sit in my car right now with two boys like are destroying the back seat.
I would love to see a photo of that. I was reading somewhere this kind of bit of advice: make it exist first, and then you can polish it up and make it good later. So this, progress, not perfection.
Good enough. Yeah, it's good enough. And most, this is like a cliche, like a guy will apply on a job if he fits like 3 or 4 of the criterion, like swing for the fences, and a woman will disqualify herself if she doesn't meet all 10. Like, I would say, like, if any one of you are looking at, like, I need to fit all of it, you don't. You don't. You just have to keep your shoulders back, head high, go in and say, I'm smart and I'm going to learn. And this is why I think I have the right attributes for you to take a chance on me, and the rest will come. Like, there's no such thing as anyone fitting. And if you're getting a job description and you check every box, don't take that job. You know all to do all these things. How are you going to learn if, like, everything on that list you know how to do already? Then you're just coasting. No, you just need to jump off the cliff, hope for the best. If it gets hard, there's always someone who's going to help you figure it out.
Yeah, jump off the cliff, metaphorically speaking. So we're at time, but I do one last question. So someone was asking if you have any book or podcast recommendations. We don't have a ton of time, but just if anything springs to mind.
I read a lot. So on every Christmas and every summer, I put a list of the books that I'm going to read, and I'm off for 8 weeks this summer, so get ready. I may do a few posts. In the last year, on the business front, a number, 2 or 3 people from McKinsey wrote this book called CEO Excellence. It doesn't matter if you're CEO or not. It talks about teams. And the one thing in the book that was the most telling for any one of you that's running a company is, what are the most important roles in your company? Identify them. And then who's the best talent you have working for you right now? And is that talent in the roles that are most critical? And of all the CEOs interviewed, a lot of them admitted, no, your best talent is usually not in your critical role. So if I can leave you with anything, read that book over the summer or listen to it over audio. And then in terms of nonfiction, my God, there's so much. Follow me on LinkedIn. You'll go back to my past posts and then follow me. There's
So we'll leave the in-person portion of our discussion here, but we can continue. You can find us on social media. LinkedIn is a great one to keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for your time and your attention span.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
Thanks so much.